I don't know, dude. Imagine if Rand Paul were environmentalist. That's basically Macron.
I don't know, dude. He's like pretty outspoken in favor of the Paris Climate Agreement. I mean, I think
that's what I just said. An environmentalist.
I mean, I think
I think that's why Ruchit likes him so much. Ruchit is basically Rand Paul, but an environmentalist.
Yeah, that's actually pretty true.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. I am a pretty strong environmentalist. That part I agree with.
And very conservative.
I am with Rand Paul on most issues, if not all, of civil liberties.
That's so off-brand.
Of civil liberties.
That's so off-brand.
AJ has an insistence that everything he disagrees with is off-brand.
Yes.
My favorite part of that exchange is how we asserted that Ruchit was basically Rand Paul, but an environmentalist. Ruchit denied it and then immediately said, I'm with Rand Paul on almost every issue.
I said on everything as it relates to civil liberties.
Ruchit saying one thing and then the opposite thing right afterwards is very on brand.
Dude.
Cool.
Fruit. I'm eating fruit. You hear
Dude,
that?
That's good, dude. So, guys, I have to say, I guess we're talking about Bitcoin today. And after having learned more about Bitcoin, I have to say that I'm being coerced into this conversation.
What are you talking about?
Dude, I just don't feel like I know enough about Bitcoin to talk about Bitcoin.
So can I tell you how this entire topic idea started?
Tell folks how it started.
Well, you, Ruchit, and AJ had a conversation about Bitcoin in the Slack, and I really didn't want to read that conversation, so I figured it would be easier if you just spoke that conversation to me while we record.
I really don't want to. Here's the thing. That conversation that we had in the Slack was difficult enough when we had it in the Slack. Like, you're making me relive a dark time in my past.
So can someone tell me why y'all hate Bitcoin?
Oh, so I don't hate Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is deeply interesting. AJ hates Bitcoin, though.
Is this the show? Because if this is the show, we have follow up. Is this the show?
I don't know what the show is.
I mean, I think this is the show, dude. I mean, we can go ahead and start with the follow up, and the audience can know we're going to talk about Bitcoin. But I think reason I got
big follow up. Impeachment. Every episode 16, everything we know about impeachment. Beep, just coming over the wire. CNN's reporting that Mike Flynn will be providing documents to the Senate. Originally, he had refused to respond to a subpoena. Then he had indicated that he would plead the fifth. Apparently, there have been some behind-the-scenes negotiations, and it's now become the case that Flynn is willing to turn over documents, both personal documents and from his business.
Do you think it's because all of his documents are actually just his tweets saying that Hillary Clinton runs a sex trafficking ring outside of Comet Pizza in Washington, D.C., and he realized I could just tell people about
That's his son who does those tweets. That's not
No.
That's Spike Flynn Jr.
No. Dude, he retweets those tweets, as I recall.
He retweets... He retweets the Mike Flynn tweets?
The Mike Flynn Jr. tweets, yeah.
No. I would never retweet my own son.
So, guys, did I tell you that a few months ago in June, I was at the Lowe's Hotel in New York City, and I saw someone who I was pretty sure was Vladimir Putin. Did I ever tell you guys about this?
Was he riding a bear?
No. He was in the restaurant. He was surrounded by security guards. They were all speaking Russian, and I was with other people, and they saw and also thought it was Vladimir Putin.
Nice.
So
Did you say hello?
I sent an anonymous tip. I didn't. The security guys weren't keen on just letting anybody and their mom kind of get close to Vladimir Putin. But Putin was meeting with some Americans, or the guy that I thought was Putin. And then I read in the New York Times that, and this was really only a month or two ago, that Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, liked to meet people at the Lowe's Hotel, and that he had met some Ukrainians there. While he was, at least according to the Times, looking into doing some deals with some Ukrainians.
Look at this. So, Richard's connecting the dots. Richard,
you
got to get on the investigation. You got to call Mueller. You got to be like, hey, I have some dots to connect.
Dude, I actually gave this information to the New York Times, and I didn't hear back.
Oh my God.
I
Really?
told him like, yeah, I just
You tweeted this at them or what? Did you
No,
send it to Liz Spade because they fired her?
No. I sent it via WhatsApp. I sent it via WhatsApp. No, they have
dumbest thing I've heard of my life.
No. They actually, if you go to their website and you want to submit tips, they have like a specific WhatsApp number that you can send messages to. Like this is the way they prefer receiving tips this way.
Oh my God.
Maybe you should have just sent those tips to the Washington Post. I mean,
so I did that too, Tom.
What?
What happened?
And they too, nothing. They too like to receive tips via WhatsApp.
You think it's a cover up?
No, I don't.
Are you kidding me?
I'm being serious. Go look on Google New York Times tips, and then go to how they like to receive tips.
No. I want to know about the Washington Post tips.
Same thing. Go onto the Washington Post website onto tips.
Okay. How to share documents with the Washington Post. Oh, they do have a WhatsApp, but I think their number one preference is Signal.
Yeah, but I didn't want to bother with setting up like a new email account and bit like that. But I'll tell you and our listeners the day that I think I saw Vladimir Putin. Hold on. June 23rd, 2016 at the Lowe's Hotel in New York City.
Won't this conversation like endanger your life?
I don't think so. He was there in public. I mean, like lots more than just me saw him. And
yeah, but you're the only one like narking him out.
Yeah, because I'm narking out Vladimir Putin and where he had breakfast on a certain day. But, maybe it wasn't him. But as I told the Post and the New York Times, it was pretty surprising. He was there with some Americans. It just so happens to be the hotel where Michael Cohen likes to meet people, and is a few blocks from where Michael Cohen lives. Michael Cohen is now, of course, under investigation and is under subpoena. But, I think it wouldn't be that hard to go. I told him this. I was like, hey, maybe you could just go call your contacts. Maybe you could just stop by the Lowe's Hotel and see if anybody that was working on that day remember seeing anything that was a little odd. I don't know.
Wow. It was a real, real Woodward, real Burt Bernstein over here.
No, not me. I mean, they had the
real
potential
Burt
to be.
Woodward over here. All right, you want to do some news stories? You want to do?
June 23rd, 2016. You heard it here first.
Yeah, I'm kind of okay. What do you? I got some good news stories.
Tell us about Texas.
This is embarrassing.
So to give everyone a little bit of background, the Texas legislature only meets for 6 months out of every 2 years. So basically
140 days to be exact.
Okay. It's like a day for every. So House floor, they were the legislature is debating a sanctuary city bill, and Matt Renaldi, a very conservative Republican, I think it would be fair to say he's a member of the Texas Freedom Caucus. Is that right, Ruchit?
I think he is one of the 12 members of the Texas Freedom Caucus.
So he called Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He called ICE, and he asked them to come take a look at some of the protesters outside the Capitol, which caused the Democratic House members to become very upset, which then caused Matt Renaldi to threaten to shoot Representative Navarez in the head with a gun. On the House floor.
Let me ask you guys a question. In your Facebook feed, did you see several posts of people defending Matt Renaldi?
No. But I'm extremely cloistered. I don't have Facebook.
Well, I saw several of those posts.
I don't actually check Facebook that often.
How do you keep in touch with the people, Rooch? If you're not on Twitter, you're not on Facebook.
Wait. Texas passed a sanctuary cities bill and is horrible. And Tom's big takeaway is, why doesn't Rooch have Facebook?
Yeah.
Tom's trying to change the things he can change, AJ. And he's decided that what it is for me to use Facebook.
Texas. Texas is good. Texas is bad in good. It's good. It's good to be bad. You know how when people say bad, like in a good way? Like when Michael Jackson was bad?
Yeah, I was pretty embarrassed. I mean, I was really pretty embarrassed by this because, I mean, it just showed that, like, there's just not a lot of interest in civil discourse left, at least on certain folks' behalf. And I think there's I think like what we've seen over the last couple of weeks is this, or really just the last few months especially, is this violent tendency towards dissent, right? And I think we've seen this, obviously we've seen it with Trump, over the last year, yelling for his protesters or yelling for his supporters to beat up anybody that protests at a Trump rally, to throw them out. We saw it with that new congressman from Montana, beating up a reporter. Did he like choke slam a reporter or something like that?
He bodied.
And
so
now,
Greg Ginforte, who is now I guess he's now a congressman from Montana. He body slammed Ben Jacobs.
He also beat him, according to Fox News.
Yeah, Ben Jacobs committed the horrible crime of asking Greg Ginforte to comment on the CBO score of the American Health Care Act.
Yeah, I mean, it just, I think there is, and I think obviously Trump is responsible for this, I think, which is just the idea that like we need to quash dissent to a point where we're beating up anybody that confronts us. And, for the legislature to not be able to handle protest, and for any representative to say that, listen, I hate protesters so much that I'm going to call ICE on them, and putting aside sort of the racist aspect to it, which is that, they're brown, so they must be illegal. I don't know. I think that's a very big problem, just to be really straight. And I think people that believe in sort of a civilized society have to, it's not a Republican or Democratic thing at that point. I think they really do just have to say, like, that's not okay. I'm not supporting anybody, regardless of whether I agree with their ideology, that does that sort of thing.
That was well said. I don't have anything snippy to say, so it's very difficult for me in this moment.
It's difficult for me too, because I can't hear either of you.
Keith Hennessey? You want to talk about Keith Hennessey?
What happened to him?
Keith Hennessey is a lecturer at Stanford University. He spent some time in the Bush White House. He wrote, I think, the most succinct blog post about the gigantic math error in the Trump budget. So Trump has proposed a $2 trillion tax cut, and Trump has assumed that the tax cut is revenue neutral, meaning that the economic growth and increase in receipts caused by the tax cut will offset all $2 trillion of the value of the tax cut. So they're saying this tax cut is going to cause $2 trillion of new revenues, and so the tax cut is revenue neutral. And then in the budget, in order to claim to have balanced the budget in 10 years, they're counting $2 trillion of new revenue from the tax cut. So basically, they counted the $2 trillion twice. Yeah, I mean, they used the $2 trillion to pay off one thing and to pay off another thing.
Nice.
So you can use $2 trillion for deficit reduction, or you can use $2 trillion to offset the revenues from the tax cut, but you can't have it both ways.
This is another way of saying you can't sell the same house twice.
Yeah, I mean, unless you buy it again in the middle. Yeah, you can sell the house and then buy it and then sell it again.
You just can't sell it to two people at the same time.
Yeah. The director of the Office of Management and Budget, Mick Mulvaney, has said that double counting the $2 trillion was deliberate.
Really?
Why did he say that?
Well,
really?
So you know how
did he actually say that, or did he just say like?
No, he really
did
say it
not,
was deliberate.
That it
no, he said it was deliberate, and then he also said that they've made some conservative estimates elsewhere, and so on the net, it's probably fine. You guys are speechless.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brave new world we live in.
I guess, like when you were in grade school and you did something embarrassing, like you fell over or your like pen leaked ink on your hand or something, and then you would just say, "Oh, I meant to do that." It was intentional. Like I meant for my clothes not to match. That's basically, as far as I can tell, what Mulvaney is saying.
It's so weird.
Is it?
I mean, it is. I think how
different is that? From,
I guess at least.
Well, go on.
I mean, I don't know. I think it's just just say that the deficit's larger. Just like own it. Who cares?
Well, on a scale from 1 to that's how Trump ran his casinos, where would you rate counting the same $2 trillion twice?
Definitely I would say definitely the way Trump ran his casinos.
Well, they can't afford to own that, right? Like, because, part of what he ran on is he's going to balance the budget and, he's going to run the government like a business.
Oh, my God. I hate running the business.
To be fair, he is running it like his business.
All right.
The American people are getting exactly what they signed up for. They wanted Trump to run this country the way he ran the Trump enterprise, and he's doing that. He pissed off everyone, including people that used to be his friends. He didn't repay his debts. He definitely engaged in double counting, and he basically stole and cheated from everyone. So, I think on that measure, he's doing exactly what he said, or what one should expect.
Wow. Okay, last thing I have from stuff that's newsworthy. On the show notes, there's a tweet by Alexander Emmons. Can you go to that tweet? Click on the tweet. Go to that tweet in your browser.
Okay, I've gone to the tweet.
Okay, when I say go, everybody start the video at the same time. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
I'm ready to go.
1, 2, 3. Okay. While Tom and Ruchit are watching this, I'll set it up for you. This is a press conference with Stuart Jones. He's an acting official in the U.S. State Department. He's being asked a question about why the administration criticizes Iran but doesn't criticize Saudi Arabia. And now he's pausing. He's pausing to think about the question. Still pausing.
He's thinking before he speaks.
He's thinking hard.
He's really thinking. Still thinking.
Hey, I wish our president thought this much.
Timestamp 30 seconds. Still thinking. He's really thinking about this one.
The video isn't frozen.
Nope. Right. Now he's answering the question. The answer is not responsive. This answer doesn't make any sense. One source of terrorism is Iran.
Yeah, got that.
Another pause.
Oh, he just walked away.
Oh, and the press conference over. This is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
He's just walking away.
It's so funny. Okay, so that video is excellent. I highly recommend that people check the show notes. Definitely check the show notes. In particular, just click on the tweet. Don't click on anything else in the show note, but do check the show note.
Yeah.
And you might as well hit Ruchit up on Twitter. He's at Good Journalism on Twitter.
I highly recommend you watch it.
Oh, he's retiring, dude. Did you see this? He's retiring.
Because of that press conference?
I don't know, but I was on, I never use Twitter, but on Alex Emmons's, on his Twitter feed, he said, yeah, it's a Reuters article, top U.S. diplomat for Middle East peace to retire. Yeah.
Is he retiring because of this? That's hilarious.
I don't know. This is his own decision. There's not been a falling out. There's no story here except another senior government official with real competence is leaving.
Oh my God. Okay. What do you want to do? You want to do the show?
Yeah. Can we talk about Bitcoin?
No, I want to talk about, before we talk about Bitcoin, I want to talk about the Hope Hick statement. I think it's something that needs to be read out loud.
Oh, I haven't seen this.
About Trump. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen this?
Oh, the one that sounds like it is right out of North Korea.
Yeah, I think so. Here's the thing.
It's like a Dear Leader. You know, like Dear John letters? This is a Dear Leader letter.
Yeah. This is exactly what it is. So here it is. President Trump
tell us who
has a
Hope
magnetic.
Hicks is first, sir.
So Hope Hicks is a spokesperson for Donald Trump, and for the president of the United States. President Trump has a magnetic personality and exudes positive energy, which is infectious to those around him. He has an unparalleled ability to communicate with people, whether he is speaking to a room of 3 or an arena of 30,000. He has built great relationships throughout his life and treats everyone with respect. He is brilliant, with a great sense of humor, and an amazing ability to make people feel special and aspire to be more than they even thought.
Wow.
That checks out.
It's just like
Probably true, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, it is a dear leader type thing, right? So, like, for our listeners that don't know, so the former North Korean dictator, ruler, what have you, Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, would have his spokespeople, put out statements about how great he was, and they would be kind of exactly like that. They would praise his charm and his charisma and his wisdom, and how he made people feel amazing, and so on and so forth. And this is crazy. Like it looks like it sounds like a joke, like something like, I think the Washington Post said this, but like something Saturday Night Live would say.
Hope Hicks graduated from SMU in 2010.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, she was a Texas GOP person for a while, right?
I don't know, but I did. I did drop the mic. I was so mad. I just dropped it.
Remember that promise Ruchit made to never touch the microphone? Remember that promise?
Remember when Ruchit bought a boom arm and installed it so that it could hold his microphone for him and he wouldn't have to drop or move the mic?
Yeah, I remember that.
Guys, can I propose something for the show?
What's that?
I propose that from now on we say we're going to talk about Bitcoin and don't talk about Bitcoin. Is there any way not to talk about Bitcoin?
Yeah, we should not talk about Bitcoin.
Okay,
now,
well let's call the episode "Everything We Know About Bitcoin." But for the love of God, don't talk about Bitcoin. Actually, I want to say one thing about Bitcoin.
Can we at least do the Bitcoin segment? Did our Bitcoin say it, or did our friend ARP say it?
Oh yeah. Okay. This is stealing shamelessly from the Twitter account. Our Bitcoin says, but basically we're going to play a game. It's going to be, so we're going to read a quote and then everyone else has to guess if this is something that someone said in the Bitcoin Reddit or if our friend ARPS said it. Just to give everyone some context, like our friend ARPS is like pretty libertarian.
He's a centrist libertarian.
Okay. Quote number 1. There are lots of towns that used to exist but no longer do, due to natural patterns of economic migration. False sentimentality isn't a countervailing concern.
Okay, I'm gonna go with ARPS.
Did our Bitcoin say it, or did ARPS say it?
I'm gonna go with ARPS.
Our Bitcoin.
Should we give a moment for the listeners?
No, don't screw the listeners. Just tell me the answer.
Listen, yeah.
What does this have to do with Bitcoin?
It's okay. Was it ARPS?
It was ARPS.
It was ARPS.
Sorry. Rich.
All right, I'm going to read it. Are you ready?
Okay, go.
The FDA kills more people than it saves.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
That was ARPS.
That could be either. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with our Bitcoin though.
Our Bitcoin.
Rooch?
ARPS is not a Bitcoin fan, or rather, he's not an FDA fan.
Yeah.
I think it was ARPS. I think it's ARPS.
It was our Bitcoin.
Nice.
Okay, Tom.
Okay, ready? As a libertarian centrist, I'd like to pick and choose the best of both parties. Unfortunately, increasing polarization makes that hard.
That was ARPS.
Got to be ARPS.
That was definitely
ARPS. That's got to be ARPS. That's ARPS.
That's ARPS.
That was definitely
ARPS. That was ARPS.
Nice. Okay. At some point, it becomes dynastic. Not that you Chelsea Clinton apologists see any problem with that.
That was ARPS.
I hope it was our Bitcoin, because I hope there are other people that are thinking this way. But
ARPS.
I think it was ARPS.
It was ARPS.
I think it was ARPS.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you guys really don't see a problem with the dynastic politics, which is sad. You guys should be opposed to dynasties.
I just don't want to talk about it. Okay, Tom.
Okay, here's one. Winter is coming. Is it efficient to heat the house with old mining equipment instead of regular heating? Did our Bitcoin say it, or did ARP say it?
Oh, okay.
Can you
I actually
know
the answer because I saw this when I was collecting mine.
That was our Bitcoin.
Yeah, that was Bitcoin.
That was our Bitcoin. Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
This one I think is tough. This one I think you're gonna have a hard time with. Venezuela is a sneak preview of how a Bernie administration would work out.
Ooh, that is tough.
That one's ARPS.
I think that's ARPS.
Yes, I win.
Was that ARPS?
It was Bitcoin.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Although, I mean, I think Bernie's just not dictatorial enough, but otherwise, probably accurate.
Okay. Here goes. Political parties are no longer mere proxies for positions. They are tribal identities, placeholders for moral standing. Was that our Bitcoin or was that ARPS?
That statement does describe AJ, but it is ARPS.
I'm gonna go with ARPS.
That was ARPS.
Dude, how many of these do we have?
So I think we're gonna have read 12, but I'm probably only gonna keep the funniest ones because I think this.
I've got one more. I've got one more.
Wait. I'm gonna go. Then you'll go. Then I'll go. Okay.
Okay.
Breathing on your own is too libertarian for Hillary Clinton.
Our Bitcoin.
I think that's our Bitcoin.
Yeah, that was Bitcoin. That one's not that funny.
Okay. Politics beats the market, but technology beats politics.
Oh, that's Bitcoin.
Ooh, that's got to be our Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, that's our Bitcoin.
Okay, are you ready? Freedom is a mindset, and Bitcoin is freedom. It wouldn't surprise me. No, you can't laugh. You can't laugh. Okay. Freedom is a mindset, and Bitcoin is freedom. It wouldn't surprise me to learn that Trump's sons hold Bitcoin.
That's got to be our Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's definitely our Bitcoin.
So this is actually a link I found on our Bitcoin, but the person who said it is actually Mike Cernovich.
Who's that?
He's the gorilla mindset guy.
You know, Mike Cernovich.
Oh, God. He's terrible.
I've never heard of this guy.
Oh my God. Okay.
That was a good segment. I'm glad we talked about Bitcoin, guys.
Yeah. Oh my God. Tom, we have results from a lot of our Supreme Court predictions.
We have so many results from so many Supreme Court predictions.
We really should have done this entire episode about everything we know about our own Supreme Court predictions.
I don't know anything about our Supreme Court predictions.
We would need to learn about our own.
There's a webpage.
Where is our webpage, Tom?
Heartlanded.com.
Heartlanded. HEARTLANDED.com.
Oh, sweet. I'm fucking winning. This is awesome.
Oh my God. Rich is at 0.630 and Tom is at 0.625 and Rich is like, oh, sweet, I'm winning.
I am, dude. Tom's a practicing lawyer. So are you. I mean, I should be excited to be beating both of you guys by anything, let alone by the massive margin that I have, similar to the greatest margin ever won by our fearless leader, Donald Trump.
He has a magnetic personality.
Yeah.
Okay, do we want to talk?
I think there are some noteworthy cases. The patent case came down. That was a couple of patent cases came down. One was, let me pull it up.
So one was Heartland versus Kraft.
Yeah.
And was this the one about whether suits need to be filed or suits can be filed in the Eastern District of Texas?
Yeah. So the economy of the
Yes.
Eastern District of Texas is probably like in a tailspin right now because basically, as we talked about in episode 10, check the show notes. The Eastern District of Texas is what's called a rocket docket. And everybody who can find any conceivable reason to will file their patent litigation in the Eastern District of Texas. And the Supreme Court basically said, like, no, you really got to sue people where their principal place of business is or where they're incorporated. And I think this is apocryphally from a IP law friend of mine, but my understanding is that basically Samsung is the Samsung has their principal place of business in the U.S. and so in Texas, and so they're probably going to move. And other than that, there aren't going to be a ton of folks left to sue in the Eastern District of Texas.
So what you're saying is that this case is a job killer.
I mean, it's a job maker in Delaware and a job killer in Texas.
I mean, it'll create jobs elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, Delaware, and Nevada, and California are going to get like a huge benefit, and the Eastern District of Texas is not.
It's unfortunate.
What is there anything else that's interesting?
Yeah. A BNSF railway. I don't know if that's interesting. I guess that was.
Oh, this is the case in in
No,
Montana
Impressions.
or whatever, right?
Yeah, the Montana case. But no, actually, Impressions v. Lexmark is a pretty important case. That's the patent case where Lexmark was suing Impressions. Impressions was an aftermarket printer ink cartridge filler, and Lexmark was basically saying by filling used ink cartridges, Impressions was violating the patent, and the Supreme Court held in favor of Impressions and kicked Lexmark to the curb.
So, Ruchit, I'm looking at our predictions, and the actual result was 8-0 result for Impressions. And I'm noticing that I had guessed 8-0 for Impressions. And I'm also noticing that Tom had guessed 8-0 for Impressions. And Ruchit, can you help me out? Did you guess 8-0 for Impressions?
You know, I'm only right 63% of the time. So sometimes when you're only right 44% of the time, I guess, it's easier maybe to sort of swing for the fences and put an 8-0 in there. Okay. I assume that's why you were right.
Okay.
But I don't remember why I thought this was a 6-2, but probably because I thought there would be somebody that would be on the side of Big Bad Lexmark.
So, and actually, in a note of seriousness, the County of LA versus Mendez case came out, and that actually is like pretty sad. So basically, the Ninth Circuit has their own sort of specific test for police shootings, and it's much more stringent than they use in other jurisdictions. And the Supreme Court was basically like, no, the Ninth Circuit, the police can shoot whomever they want, and it was very sad. On the other hand, we all three correctly predicted the outcome.
We did. Well,
we
except
all
for
very.
Ruchit.
No, I got it. 5-3, Los Angeles.
Yeah,
it was 8-0 Los Angeles.
Yeah, but I mean, I knew Los Angeles.
Oh,
was
I'm noticing
win,
that
so.
I guessed 8-0 Los Angeles.
You like your 8-0s, AJ. I like your 8-0s.
Okay.
Say.
Sidebars?
So, yeah, sure. You want to do a sidebar?
Someone else go first because I gotta pull mine up.
I can go first. So my sidebar is this ProPublica project called PolitiWhoops, which is a compilation of tweets that your politicians have deleted that you can search by. And a couple of notable examples is our your friend and mine, Jason Chaffetz, tweeting, "I like your house," and then a follow-up tweet from Jason Chaffetz, "And I like turtles." Both of which were deleted subsequently.
I have a candidate for. Is this on PolitiWhoops? Liz Cheney tweeted and then later deleted. She tweeted that the letter that Trump sent to Jim Comey was the best termination letter ever, but she since deleted that tweet.
So is this all the tweets that people have deleted? Like politicians have deleted?
It's politicians have deleted these tweets, and so you can search them.
Oh my God. This is very cool.
Like a lot of these aren't even that funny.
Well,
like they're not even mistakes. They're not even mistakes.
Yeah, and some of them aren't funny. They're just deleted tweets.
But why are they deleting them?
Presumably because they made a mistake. Politicians make mistakes too, Ruchit.
Now we're going crazy. So Marco Rubio's press office retweeted something about how Lockheed Martin lands support for Navy missile program. But why did he delete that tweet? It doesn't make any sense.
Oh my God. Dina Titus tried twice, Democrat from Nevada, tried twice to tweet a Memorial Day message, and both times had to delete it. Okay. Should I do mine?
Yeah, sure.
So mine's like, mine is a book. It's called Hitler's American Model. It is a book about the Nuremberg race laws and about how they sort of find their spiritual root in Southern race laws about intermarriage and things like that. And I mean, something to keep in mind is that like throughout the South, mixed race marriages were illegal well into the 60s until the Loving v. Virginia case in 1967. And so I think the point isn't that like people from the South are Nazis, but the point is more that it's interesting to think about where are the parallels to authoritarianism and fascism throughout the world, right? I mean, sometimes you defeat authoritarianism in like one climactic war, and sometimes it just sort of gurgles under the surface in your society for 70 years. Okay, so there's one passage that I thought was like particularly on brand for us. I mean, as everybody knows, the title of our show is a little bit of a joke about how three immigrants in a big city sort of don't have a lot of authority to talk about the heartland, and I found this passage in the book sort of interesting.
That's BS, dude. We have as much authority as anyone else, but continue. Sorry. I
just
had to defend our authority.
Now that's authoritarian.
Defending our authority would be like shooting you in the face, AJ, as one Matt Renaldi threatened to do.
As one German author observed in a 1935 book written in praise of FDR, New York had very little to do with America. New York was a place where the representatives of the races gathered together to create a mishmash of ideas and people, a place marked by a great influence of the Jews, which made institutions like Columbia University centers of radicalism. The true America, by contrast, was Anglo-Saxon and Protestant. German racists have been saying similar derisive things about Jewish New York City for years. Anyway, so there you go. Jewish boy in the big city doesn't speak for the real America.
There we go.
I mean, think about like what Ted Cruz said about New York and his New York about Donald Trump and his New York values, right? I mean, that's like a pervasive sort of thought in our society that like Trump's New York values don't speak for America, or Hillary Clinton's New York values don't speak for America. Anyway, Ruch, what do you got?
Ruch is going to talk about Bitcoin.
No, yeah, dude. No, actually, I'm not going to talk about Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about Ethereum.
Oh my god! This is the article my wife sent me, and then I sent you. You're stealing from my wife.
No. I found this article like 4 days ago.
On the Slack. You found it in the Slack.
No. Ethereum is the forefront of digital currency. No.
Oh no, I sent you a Mashable article. Sorry. My wife sent me, and I sent you a Mashable article about Ethereum. This is a Coinbase.com article about Ethereum.
Yeah. This is propaganda from Coinbase.com.
The Ethereum is eloquent and kind, magnanimous, and has such a compelling personality. Anyway, this is it's just something I would urge people to read in the show notes. This article helped me kind of understand. It kind of helped me understand about what digital currencies are and what these digital currencies are doing. And so, a lot of people have heard about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is probably the most popular digital cryptocurrency, and people are saying Ethereum will soon surpass Bitcoin. So anyway, it was kind of an interesting article. Like I said, I'm kind of glad we didn't really talk about Bitcoin or Ethereum, because there's a lot of content out there that's a lot better at explaining this stuff than I am. So I'm glad that we didn't do it yet.
Guys, I'm bored. I'm gonna go to bed.
We were just having a good conversation, AJ.
Yeah,
you too. I'm gonna go to bed.
Vibe, man.
No, you two keep talking about Bitcoin, but I'm gonna go to bed.
Dude, it's pretty early.
No, this is past my bedtime.
Oh, it's 9:30.
Yeah, it's 9:30. Everyone should know.
It's past my. No, hold on. I wake up a little bit before 6 every morning.
So do I, dude.
What time do you go to bed?
Usually
Tom
like
doesn't sleep,
11
dude.
or midnight.
How many hours do you care for your toddler?
Oh, 0.
AJ, how many hours do you care for your toddler? My understanding was Lily did everything.
I mean, I got home.
See, this is just like another example of how, parents have all the advantages in the world. They get to like throw down that trump card in any argument.
As AJ just did.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
So I got to work at 7:30, and I got home from work around 6:30, and I finished putting Jonah to bed around 7:30. And then at 8 o'clock, I started recording this podcast.
So what you're saying is you spent 1 hour with your toddler?
How many hours did you spend with my toddler?
AJ, maybe we should end the podcast. Like maybe this is a good time, and our listeners can think about parenting.
Can we have an after show at least?
What was our after show going to be?
I don't know. AJ will record something into it. AJ, just edit some after show.
So should we keep talking, Tom? What do you think?
Tom, you two keep talking, but I'm going to go to bed.
But can we do this? But AJ's our connection.
No, I'm just going to stop recording. I'll leave Skype on.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Why are you... Okay.
All right. Yeah, I mean, we'll eventually... Okay, bye, AJ.
See you, AJ.
Dude, this is so weird.
It is a little weird. I just wanted to know why you people hated Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Oh, No. I don't hate either one. I think they're interesting. I think the reason... So I've been trying to figure out both of these things just for my own edification. And the question I've been asking the people that I've been talking to is why are Ethereum or Bitcoin more convenient for you or better unless you were a drug dealer or an arms trafficker? Because if you're either of those things, Bitcoin is really good for you, right? It's anonymized.
But it's not anonymized.
No, it is anonymized.
No, it's not.
Are you sure?
No, it's not. Yeah, it's anonymized in the same sense that your IP address is anonymized, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then it's not even better for drug dealers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. What makes Bitcoin so useful for drug dealers is that there's no central body that dictates who and what they can do with their money, right? There's no bank. If a bank sees a gigantic transaction go through their wires or whatever, they're going to flag that and send it to the government, right? Whereas if this decentralized Bitcoin sees a gigantic transaction go through, they're not going to give 2 Bitcoins about it.
That was good, Tom. That was good.
Yeah.
Although 2 Bitcoins is $5,000 now, so
it's a lot of money. Yeah. That's why they're not going to give 2 Bitcoins about it.
Anyway, I thought it was an interesting article, and people can read it.
I have a lot of questions about Bitcoin that maybe somebody could answer for me.
Yeah, well, why don't you can ask a couple, and I can tell you that I don't know the answer.
Yeah. Well, really the big question for me is it sure doesn't seem scalable, but maybe I just don't understand Bitcoin enough, right? My understanding of the way Bitcoin...
What about it doesn't feel scalable to you? What aspects of it?
Well, so my understanding of the way Bitcoin works is Bitcoin is basically a ledger that keeps a record of the transactions that each Bitcoin has undergone. So if I give AJ a Bitcoin, that ledger is going to record the transaction that from me to AJ, right? And then there's what's called the blockchain, which is sort of a public...
I thought the blockchain was the ledger.
Well, I guess maybe this is part of my confusion. My understanding is the blockchain is sort of the official ledger where everyone can check it against. It's a decentralized chain of all Bitcoin transactions, right? So, the way you get recorded, so let's say I want to send money to AJ, I send that transaction to this decentralized network, and sometimes I pay a small fee, and there are these processors out there, these computers out there whose the entire job is to manage these, to keep these records of all of these transactions that are occurring. And the reason they keep these records is if they do the computing power necessary to keep track of all of these transactions, they will get rewarded when the algorithm creates the cryptocurrency creates new Bitcoin out of thin air, right? So they have a monetary interest in tracking all of these transactions. But the way I understand it is that in order to keep track at every transaction, in order to keep track of whether this is a legitimate transaction or not, you have to go through to the inception of that Bitcoin, right? It's sort of like how when you are checking title, right, when you're transferring land, you have to go to the, in order to check that title, sometimes you go to what's called to the sovereign. You trace that title all the way back to the sovereign, right? And that's a way of making sure you have good and clean title, right? So that's sort of how Bitcoin works. But, as more and more Bitcoin is added and as time progresses, you can see how that would become increasingly more and more work, right? So I just don't understand how it can scale. Like my part of my understanding nowadays is that even now there's like an hour delay or so for a transaction to be confirmed, right? So as there's going to be new Bitcoin added all the way to the year 2140, right? So I can imagine in the year 2140, if we're still using Bitcoins, right? You have to go back all the way to 2015 to see the inception of this Bitcoin, and you have to keep track of all. It just seems like a lot of work, right? And I'm wondering, how does that scale?
I guess my other question too is, and I don't have an answer to that, Tom. I think what I've heard is that it takes, like, on a good day, 10 minutes for a transaction to post and verify.
Really?
Yeah. So, which means that it takes.
Yeah, I heard it was an hour these days.
So I think the network has really slowed down over the last, I think, literally week. But my understanding was it takes, typically 10 minutes. But just to give you an idea, it takes seconds for a Visa transaction to post. So
yeah, exactly. You can't do this in real time. Like, you can't go to the coffee store and pay in Bitcoin because you have to wait 10 minutes before you can get your, transaction approved.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then I think they're really screwed. So I don't know either. I mean, I don't. I've sort of seen this sort of, I won't call it cryptocurrency, but I've seen these types of currencies before. So I don't know if you guys remember, but in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a company called Moo Cash, and this was an online currency, and you could buy this online currency with dollars, and it never really took off. So it kind of did, because they were giving the currency away for free. So people like me and, were just signing up for the currency because we would just get free currency that could spend anywhere. So
Coinbase did that for a while too. You remember that when Coinbase first started up, it would give you a whole Bitcoin, right? If you signed up for a Coinbase account. Now I think, or at least when I signed up for a Coinbase account, they gave you 1/1000th or 1/1,000,000th of a Bitcoin for free.
See, they don't even do that anymore. I signed up for Coinbase last week or something.
When you link to it, I logged into my Coinbase account. It's worth the whole 4 cents.
So, I just don't know how it's more efficient than real money, And so one of the podcasts that I was listening to in preparation for this podcast, and that's why I was saying there are actually a lot of really good podcasts about Bitcoin out there that do it better justice than at least I can do. And they were talking about, the person that was speaking was talking about how Bitcoin isn't really useful in Western societies, because Western societies have completely built out banking networks and debit card networks and credit card networks and all of these other things. And so there's just really no need for Bitcoin. But, you could have a need, in other countries. But yeah, I think that was what I was thinking too, Tom, was that why is this better? Why is this a better form of money? You know what I mean? And why is this a better way to transact?
And actually that's why I really like that Glenn Fleischman article, because I thought, I think some of the points he made were kind of silly, but I think he had some real substantive points, right? Because the Glenn Fleischman article was just a response to Mark Anderson,
Mark Andreessen
invested Andreessen.
Tom, from now on, you should call him Mark Anderson. You should just
I might.
You should just mispronounce his name, and you should tweet at him and say, Mark, we discussed you on the show, and then skip to the point where the show is so he can listen to you mispronounce his name.
I'm sure he's got a Google alert for his name, so I don't have to even tweet at him. He'll find us, right?
Dude,
I just have to put him in. I just have to put him in the show notes.
Yeah. Just put them in the show notes, dude.
But anyway, so this dude, he has significant investments in various Bitcoin technologies, startups, that sort of thing, right?
He does.
And he posted...
He has backed a Bitcoin hedge fund, in fact.
Yeah. And he posted, or he wrote an essay for the New York Times about Bitcoin, telling people how he thinks Bitcoin is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And this Glenn Fleischman article was just sort of a point-by-point rebuttal of that. Yeah.
So what were some of the points he was making?
Right, like so. For example, like Anderson was saying that that
I just can't stop laughing every time you say that. It's good. It's good. What was Anderson saying?
So, like, he was saying, for example, that Bitcoin is. AJ will edit this out, I'm sure.
This is good. You're giving him good indication.
So,
heads up.
So. Yeah, so he was saying, there's advantages related to fraud, right? That there are no chargebacks. Unlike a credit card, you can pay with it, and this has never existed in digital form before. Blah blah blah. Fleischman points out, well, it's true that Bitcoin protects the seller, but it doesn't protect the buyer, because once you send once, for example, I send a Bitcoin to you, Ruchit, there's no way for me to claw back that money automatically. Unlike with a credit card, if you were to charge my credit card and then you later defrauded me, then I can go to my credit card company and say, hey, credit card company, Ruchit defrauded me, so give me that money back, right? There's no system for Bitcoin.
You definitely could not do
I will
that,
say
no.
Ether does have a system to counteract that. They have what's called smart contracts. Basically, Ether within Ethereum, you have an entire programming language where you can basically create rules by which the Ether is transferred. That digital currency is transferred. So I can, in my transaction to you, Ruchit, with an Ether coin, I can say, if Ruchit gives me this thing, or if, this other condition occurs, then transfer the money to Ruchit, but only then transfer the money to Ruchit, never before.
Yep.
So, I mean, but again, I don't know how it overcomes this processing, the scale issue, but again, maybe I'm underestimating sort of the power of computers going into the future, right? Like maybe this is a linear problem, and computer processing power will be exponential in the future. Who knows?
Could be, but I also think like the blocks have to be uploaded or distributed. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but that's that's another thing, which is weird. Well, so I think the average block
blockchain.
Size, yeah. Well, so I think the average so every time there's like a new series of transactions that are recorded, I believe it's called a new block. And so the size of a block, I think, is like 10 megabytes. So those blocks,
I thought it was a megabyte.
Maybe it's a megabyte. I guess I just don't know. But I read 10 somewhere. But the point is that has to be uploaded and distributed, right? And kind of to your point of the block history of a specific Bitcoin, like a title record, will only get longer and longer as that Bitcoin changes hands more and more. So let's say that Bitcoin really does take off. And so let's say that I think there's something like $300 million in Bitcoin that's transacted, and it's 2 transactions per second or something like that, right? Now, Visa has, I believe, 6,000 transactions per second. It's something pretty magnificently different. But let's just say that you're going from 2 transactions per second to 10 transactions per second. So not only do you increase the transactions by 5 times, but there's almost an exponential type of growth, because as the exact same Bitcoin changes hands more frequently, there's now more title history to go through, right?
Yeah. Well, and yes, the other problem that I think,
because the number of Bitcoin is finite.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's deflationary. if you think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the other the other question that I had, right? So in the year 2041, there will be no longer new Bitcoins generated. Okay, or 2141. Sorry, in the year 2141, there'll be no longer new Bitcoins generated, and that seems like a far out, long away time, right? But when you combine it with the fact that in order to use your Bitcoin, you have to have your Bitcoin wallet, right? Your Bitcoin wallet contains a private key which will cryptologically sign each transaction. And without that private key, if you lose that private key, right, you can no longer sign that transaction that will send one Bitcoin to another person. Right? So if you lose that private key, it's just like that Bitcoin doesn't exist because you can't use that Bitcoin anymore, right? And so these private keys are stored on hardware, right? And humans are notoriously bad about having backups. Hardware fails.
And lots of Bitcoin have disappeared this way, right?
Yeah,
people throwing away USB.
Exactly.
So we're not like making stuff up here.
Yes.
This has actually already happened.
Yeah, and you know the other issue is hacking, of course, which has happened multiple times, where you know your hardware is compromised and someone steals your Bitcoin, but that doesn't really have the deflationary effect that losing the Bitcoin does, right?
Sure.
So you know, I guess I don't know how either Bitcoin or Ethereum solve that problem.
I think this is one of the problems of so you know, we've seen this problem before with gold, right? Gold is a fundamentally deflationary thing, right? And the reason is because it is not always, but it tends to be. And the reason is gold is relatively finite. And so if you go back to like the 1800s and the 1900s, even when we were on the gold standard, you would see the value of, if the value of gold spiked, or the value of money went down dramatically, you know, you just didn't have the ability to repay your debt if everything was convertible to gold. And so this created huge problems for everyone, but definitely for borrowers. And so one of the things that I think about is, if you think about like the sort of three things that a modern society has, right? One, it has a government that maintains order, whether that government is a democracy or a dictatorship or whatever, but a government that maintains order. Two, they have relatively accessible education, so you know productivity can improve really through education. And the third thing that they have is access to credit. And so every currency has that feature of being something that you can borrow in. And it's going to be really hard to borrow in Bitcoin because of the value fluctuating as much as it does. And the fact that it's limited means the value of Bitcoin should always increase. So if I borrow one Bitcoin from you today, Tom, as long as Bitcoin usage persists or rather increases, then that dollar will be worth, you know, maybe $10 or $20, who knows when. Like if I had borrowed a Bitcoin from you, you know, 6 months ago, I would owe you like, you know, in terms of dollars, I'd owe you like 3 times as much. It would be insane, you know?
Yeah.
So that would just be like very, very hard. So that's another thing that I think will be difficult for cryptocurrencies to get around is how will they become a form of credit? Because if they're not, because the amount of spending that occurs in the economy that is just cash, as in like me and you spending dollars that we have earned, is like fairly minuscule compared to the amount that's financed by credit. Like nobody is like buying houses with cash, or not that, unless they're Californians moving to Austin, I guess. But you know, most people are buying houses with credit. Most people are taking vacations with credit. Most people are buying cars with credit. So you can do all of those things in U.S. dollars. It's not clear to me how you can do all of those things in Bitcoin, even if everything was just because of the nature of the currency being deflationary.
Do you know why? So do you know why there is a limit on that? Like, why is it that Bitcoin will stop producing new Bitcoin in 2141? Why not go forever?
Well, so here's the reason. Yeah. So here's the reason. I think one of the appeals of Bitcoin and the way that was that I think Bitcoin was basically like a libertarian idea. I mean, I don't know that it necessarily, you know, that's what it has become, right? And it's become that because people don't trust central banks, right? especially libertarians. They're afraid that central banks will inflate away the value of the U.S. dollar, right? They'll just print so much money that the dollar won't have any value anymore. And I mean, so if you think about like Rand Paul and Ron Paul, one of their big things was audit the Fed, right? They didn't want the Federal Reserve to be independent because they wanted the government to be able to control, and really Congress to be able to control the money supply. They didn't want the Fed as an independent body to control the money supply. And the reason is because they're afraid that the Fed will just inflate away these debts. So Bitcoin was, like gold, a little bit of an answer to that, right? It was to say, listen, there's a finite amount. It's not controlled by anybody. We know exactly how much is going to exist, and we know that production is going to stop in 2141. So there's nobody can devalue Bitcoin unless Bitcoin stops being used. So the idea was, as long as Bitcoin is used, it will continue increasing in value.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think that's the biggest probably issue with Bitcoin is, and I think a lot of the arguments for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are to say this: it's like gold, but it's easy to transact with, right? Because it's really hard to transact with gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I can't ship you a bunch of coins.
Well, tell any Indian auntie that.
They would dispute my assertion.
Yeah, they would dispute your claim.
But that's sort of the whole idea is, and so when you look at Bitcoin relative to gold in terms of efficiency, it's awesome, but it has the property of being limited like gold does. But when you look at Bitcoin compared to cash or credit, really just our modern financial system in terms of efficiency, it doesn't fare that well, At least not right now.
And an interesting, not an aside on that point is, in India recently, Prime Minister Modi basically had a huge program where he took a bunch of cash out of circulation. Did you hear about the ramifications of this?
Totally. I mean, so my family felt it, like, personally, right? So,
how so?
Well, so for our listeners that aren't aware, so I think it was in November, Prime Minister Modi, who is the head of the Indian government, basically declared that the 500 rupee bill that was in circulation was no longer worth anything. It was no longer legal tender. And so if you had a 500 rupee bill or tens of thousands of 500 rupee bills or whatever,
that was the biggest denomination, right?
Not the biggest, but the most common.
Oh,
so
the most common?
The most common. So 500 rupees.
Okay.
Like 500 rupees is like the equivalent of like, I think it's like $8, right? Or it's not even $10. So it would be like saying the $5 bill or the $10 bill or maybe the 20s.
The $20,
yeah,
the 20, yeah.
Exactly. The $20 bill is no longer worth anything. So if you're an American and you're sitting around and you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. I don't really have that many $20 bills anyway. That's not how the Indian economy has historically worked, right?
It's an almost all-cash society.
It's almost all-cash society. Indian people have like millions of rupees just sitting in their houses, and it's really common. Under their beds, literally under their beds, right? And they have gold. They have rupees, which are used for kind of normal commerce, and then they have gold, which is where their really their wealth is stored in gold. And so what this did, he did this overnight. And so the next day you woke up and your 500 rupee bills were no longer accepted as legal tender. No one would take your money. And so you had to go and wait in line at the bank to turn in your 500 rupee bills so you could get new 500 rupee bills. And
it's funny. There's this great. I think it was a Planet Money did an episode about this where they had a story about how you only had a certain amount of time in order to turn in all your bills in exchange for credit or banking institution or whatever you want. Right. And they had these stories about people waiting in these incredible lines to try to change it. And then there was one guy is telling this sob story about his grandmother who was in a coma during the time that he was supposed to exchange it. And she couldn't exchange it. Now her entire life savings is worth nothing because it was all in 500 rupee bills. But the crazy part of this story is how all of the people that they interviewed that had these incredible sob stories were still like, well, it's part of our duty to the country.
Yeah.
They're like, if this is going to eliminate corruption, then, this is the price we have to pay.
Yeah. And I think that's right. I mean, I know a ton of people that were inconvenienced, and honestly, like, can you imagine us as Americans, like, being forced to stand in line for 8 hours, let alone for like days and days? Like, we would revolt probably, or maybe we wouldn't revolt. We'd probably just complain about it on Twitter. But I
would definitely talk about it on the Slack.
Yeah, I would do that too, and on this podcast. But the people were like universally in favor. They're like universally in favor, despite being inconvenienced, because the thought was that it's really just the corrupt that have tremendous sums of money that they cannot convert, and it's people that are dodging their taxes and things like that. And because in India they are trying to turn it towards a more electronic economy, But remember, part of being an electronic economy also is the government wants to track everything. Because they want to know how much you're making. They want to know, how much, so they can collect tax, right? They want to know so they can prevent you from evading taxes or laundering money or whatever else. So at what point does that happen to Bitcoin, where the government's like, hold on a second, like, we're not going to let you just like do all these transactions, that are outside the financial system because we can't track this stuff.
Yeah.
It is still pretty exciting, and it could be a big deal, and it could be like very new, but it is very new, but I guess I just don't know how like some of these issues are going to be overcome when it comes to like consumer convenience, And maybe that's why like there's more use of it in Africa and.
And I think part of the answer to that question is really a technological question is, Are you willing to bet on how much computer processing power will advance in the future, right? Like, if you see if that processing power greatly,
that's an underappreciated part of it. I think, Tom. I think that's an underappreciated, because I actually haven't thought of it that way. I've primarily thought of it of like, does it get adopted by consumers? But I think what you're saying is important too.
Yeah. If that processing power greatly outpaces the need for that processing power by these cryptocurrencies, right? Then you could see an almost instantaneous confirmation of your transactions, right?
Totally.
It all depends, right?
I think the other
because
area
right now, one of the interesting facts that I saw in researching these Bitcoins is that the computers that process the blockchain, right, that process the transactions to add it to the blockchain are something like 500 times more powerful than the combined the supercomputers. Do you remember anything like that?
So hold on, you're saying that like the combined processing power of all these computers on the blockchain is more than like 500 supercomputers? That's crazy.
Yeah. Something. Let me hold on. AJ, edit this part out.
That's pretty amazing, honestly. If that's the
here we go.
The case.
All right. Bitcoin's worldwide computational output is currently nearing 200 exaflops, 200,000 petaflops, or 800 times the combined capacity of the top 500 supercomputers in the world.
Wow.
So that's like the level of processing needed to cover a transaction in an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And at this low level of transaction volume where you're getting 2 transactions per second or $300 million a day.
Now, so I'm not one to bet against, right, technology usually, because I think, we have a good shot that there could be some advance in technology that causes, the processing power to greatly outpace the need in the Bitcoin arena, right? Like no one, 15, 17 years ago, no one ever thought we would be using GPUs in the way we use them today, right? Like,
sure.
That was a huge boon in our ability to do cryptological things that were normally really process intensive back in the late 90s, early 90s, etc. Right? So, I mean, it's possible that like in the next, 10, 20 years, we have another similar discovery that allows us to, outpace Bitcoin's need for all this processing power.
Yeah. Maybe that's kind of exactly what happens. That I think it just has to become like very, very convenient to customers. And again, it just doesn't. I think the area that it's actually most interesting is microtransactions, right? Because that's an area that really credit cards and, the sort of normal payment processing or like money transfer networks cannot compete with Bitcoin, right? Because like, at least right now, Visa is charging 30 cents plus, 2.5% on every transaction.
Something like 2 to 3%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that 30 cents as a base is like really problematic because if I want to send you $1, Tom, or if you want to charge me $1 for something, you're going to get 30 cents taken right off the top. It just doesn't make any sense, But you look at
but
other
it also
things
doesn't make any sense to wait an hour to do that dollar transaction, right?
Well, and maybe one of the ways it'll be used is maybe it'll save journalism, dude. Maybe it'll let me and you just like sort of tip people 5 cents at a time for a good article, and maybe that shit will add up. I don't know, but because like you look at it, there's just payments are just so freaking convenient. Like money transfer is so convenient.
It is incredibly convenient. Like, we go on
like
vacations
Venmo,
together.
Dude. Venmo.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how easy it is after a vacation. We just enter our cost into SplitVise, and then it funnels us to Venmo, and we immediately know how much each person owes every other person. We can transfer that money in a day.
Yeah. I just don't know what it just seems like a problem now that doesn't really need solving, But maybe it's like Dropbox, right? Like maybe it's like, carrying around USB sticks wasn't really a big pain in the ass and it was fine. And like, how often did you
really... It was the worst. It was the worst. It was so bad.
Dude, Tom, you're so high maintenance, dude.
I have no record of files, computers before Dropbox. Like, they're just not there. Only after Dropbox do I have a record of files.
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? Is that like Dropbox to me was like this like interesting invention, but I didn't really need it per se. And now I'm like, oh, I love it, So maybe that's what it'll be. Maybe somebody will need to create the Dropbox of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And at that point, people will be like, shit, this is so much better than just spending cash or, credit or whatever else,
Well, and the other thing to remember, presumably, like what Bitcoin evangelists will tell you is that Bitcoin is only a manifestation of the underlying technology, right? The underlying technology being the blockchain, a decentralized ledger of transactions, right? And they'll tell you that there are other, it's up to it's up to the imagination of future startups and companies to come up with other uses for the decentralized blockchain that become the killer app that launches Bitcoin, and you know what I mean? That allows the success of this ecosystem.
Yeah. And I mean, and the other thing that's interesting about the blockchain is once you record a transaction, it is very hard to go back, kind of to your point about fraud, right? It is very hard to go back and change the recording of that transaction, right? So like, imagine if somehow you figured out a way to fraudulently record a title, right? To a house. Like, let's say that's how, like, let's say title was done through the blockchain. That would be a really, really big problem.
Yeah, because once you transfer that property is transferred. I don't know if there's a way to undo that transfer.
I think it's very, very hard.
You'd have to have the power of the state force the transferee to transfer that property back to the transferor.
Well, that'll be interesting too, right? When we have our first sort of like Bitcoin related lawsuits, like let's say you and I enter into a contract. You know what I mean? And you and I pay you like 3 Bitcoin, but you never deliver the goods or whatever else. Will you owe me 3 Bitcoin? Will you owe me 3 Bitcoin at the conversion price? At the conversion price on the day the transaction took place?
Yeah.
What will you owe me?
So thinking through the law on that, right? Like the IRS has issued an opinion or notice that Bitcoin is property, right? And under like the general property rule that you don't generally get specific performance, right? So you couldn't specifically force me. You couldn't get the specific performance of forcing me to give you that Bitcoin, right? So you'd have to get your expectation interest, which would be the cash value of whatever you were transferring at the time.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna see my property professor this
dude. You should ask
Friday. I'm gonna ask her this. Yeah, I'm gonna ask her about Bitcoin and see what she thinks about this transaction. Like, because it's an interesting intersection of contracts, property, and monetary policy, I guess. Okay, I think that's a good time to call it, as any.
I like it. I like it, dude. I can't believe AJ didn't like this conversation. This is
nothing is on brand for AJ,
dude. Like he needs to listen to this, and he needs to recognize that we don't need to be on brand all the time. And it's okay for us to just talk about stuff without being upset about it.